Today, we're joined by James Wicklund, a longtime veteran of the global energy industry. Over his career, he's worked nearly every part of the sector, from geophysics and engineering to equity research, hedge fund management, and investment banking. He's worked internationally throughout his career and has been recognized multiple times for his expertise in the oil and gas space, including Best on the Street honors from the Wall Street Journal. Most recently, James served as managing director and senior banker in the energy group at Stevens Inc. Hey, Jim, glad to have you here in our podcast. I'm sure you've seen the world's changed a lot in the last 6 days.
Really, I don't know if I've noticed anything really different about anything. There's a number with a 7 in front of it on my screen, but I don't know what it goes to. Something crudely. Now it's just amazing. There was a debate a week ago whether Trump would actually do something, and the consensus of opinion was that he was going to give Iran more time, because if he attacks Iran and they shut down the Straits of Hormuz, gasoline prices go up, and it really hurts Trump's midterm election chances if all of inflation, including gasoline, goes higher. So we decided, a group among ourselves, analysts who are usually wrong, that he would probably wait. And then, of course, the next morning he attacked. But it's interesting. Oil's up 12% so far. Don't get me wrong. I remember when the world was ending and oil was 147, and now we've got the Straits of Hormuz shut down for 4 or 5 days, and oh my God, oil's almost 80. It's not quite as panicked as it used to be, is it?
No, I agree. I mean, it's kind of shocking when you think about it. You would have thought, like I said, it's the difference in oil, just the incremental change, is a great multiple. But apparently this time, the 20%, decline really hasn't had much of an impact.
Not yet. I am hoping, since, that doesn't cost anything, I am hoping that is because the world understands how quickly Mr. Trump is going to make the Straits of Hormuz safe. And I have to believe that very early on in the war planning, a great deal of attention was paid to how to keep the Straits of Hormuz open in case of attack. And we have had such an overwhelmingly successful military effort that I think there are people out there being as optimistic as me. And then there's the worry, of course, that before the Iran thing escalated and oil was sitting at 64, we were at a conference, and the consensus of opinion was the expectation that oil would be 54 at that particular point in time. So you have an industry right now that believes ex-Iran oil's $54. So how big of a premium do you really want to put on a bet that could be closed out tomorrow?
Yeah, and it seems like, Iran's, one of their largest customers is China.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And, all their allies are being quite quiet, shall we say. Just like, Venezuela, they've all been kind of quiet, all these countries' allies.
Smart people. The last 2 times I can remember people daring Trump, fine. Oh, yeah, well, come get me. And twice he actually did. So if I was Kim Jong-il, I might be keeping my mouth closed too.
Yeah. I was thinking, after watching what we did and what the IDF did, I was thinking maybe we should hire them to go find Nancy Guthrie. They could probably find her in 20 minutes.
The intelligence, to me, if anything is going to spook other countries, it's the level of intelligence that the U.S. and Israel had about everything having to do with both Qatar when the attack happened last year, or this time with Tehran. It makes you believe there truly are no secrets. But the collateral damage to me is the issue, and it's in some ways kind of sad. When the Ukraine-Russia war broke out and gas deliveries from Russia ended, and natural gas prices spiked like crazy, and everybody who could divert an LNG cargo to Europe did. Pakistan was one of those countries that had the weakest contracts. And so they were taken advantage of exceptionally 4 years ago with cargoes that were being lost to higher bidders in Europe. And Pakistan made the observation, I think we're going to move back to coal since this is unreliable. And they have in part moved back to coal. But now 99% of their natural gas comes through the Straits of Hormuz. Bangladesh and Pakistan, it's 99% and 72%. So you've got two of the poorest countries in Asia who just lost access to 70 to 100% of their energy source. We talk about how the U.S. people are going to have to pay a little more for their gasoline. No one in Europe or California has much sympathy for us, considering what gasoline costs them. But when you think of an entire country losing all of its power, that's going back to the Stone Age in a big hurry. And so some of the collateral damage is going to be to the countries that can least afford it. So far, it's been 4 or 5 days. And the biggest news is that the Gulf states countries are running out of storage. To me, the biggest story is nothing's getting out. But that's going to be the question until that changes. And we were going to record a podcast, the other day, but realized that by the time it gets published, you have no idea what will happen. Now I realize that's also the same with this, though I think your process is probably a little quicker. But if the Straits of Hormuz haven't opened, prices will be higher and the situation will be more desperate. And that will go on every day until Iran gives in.
What impact do you think it'll have domestically on, say, oil field service companies, as well as oil production in the U.S.? Because I've seen a couple articles, just, I guess, speculation, but, some after Venezuela and now this, some companies are starting to look maybe more, well, before this probably, more overseas as opposed to domestic, at least some of the international companies. Do you see that continuing, or do you think maybe this is going to put a quick halt to that?
Well, it was actively continuing until a week ago. All the oil field service companies that can grow their international presence are growing it as fast as they can against a backdrop of the U.S. market that wasn't supposed to grow. It's actually supposed to be down a couple of percent this year and not have a growth spurt for a little while. So it was interesting. When Maduro got taken, all the service companies went up. And there for a couple of weeks, we were the best performing subsector of the market. Okay. This week, while oil prices have marched up, the stock prices have marched down. And because now, instead of the promise of working in Venezuela, you have the reality of not working in Saudi Arabia and Iraq, where you actually were making money before. I mean, Iraq shut in half of its oil production already. You shut down half your oil production, you shut down almost half of your oil field service needs. So I think that's what's hitting them lately. But they're back to the same issue. The oil companies aren't doing as badly because they're more diversified. But service is the end of the whip. They're the most leveraged to anything that changes. At $50 oil, your oil is still worth $50. My drilling rig has the value of a boat anchor. Okay. So the issue with service is usually more severe. And since the Middle East was the growth engine for the next several years, second being deep water, having that come to a halt, I think it has a lot of people spooked. But again, if they open the straits tomorrow, it's all back to completely normal again.
Yeah, it's interesting to see it all get politicized so quickly. And of course, it becomes really political here, but, you've just got a bunch of people butting heads. But, are they really looking at, the price of oil and how it's going to impact the U.S.? Probably not so bad. I think China, some of the other ones are the people who are using the boats and things like that. I don't know, maybe India. Some of those other ones are going to feel the impact, possibly, would you say?
China will. China's been putting 1 million barrels a day into their strategic petroleum reserve. So they can cut back on their purchases and just quit filling their SPR for a while. But they've already started to shut down refineries because they aren't getting delivered crude. So they're taking a multi-pronged approach. But if you've got a factory and you can't get raw materials, your choices are kind of slim.
Yeah. There were, I guess, some of the refineries in the Middle East, they were talking about those shutting down.
Wouldn't surprise me. I mean,
was it Kuwait or Saudi Arabia? Some of them.
Kuwait did, and I think Saudi was talking about it. They were going to shut down the export of products, which is effectively shutting down their refineries. If you can't send it anywhere, and I've got my storage full, I can't keep running crude. I got no place to put it. Remember a couple of years ago when the price of oil for one day went negative $37?
Oh yeah.
That's what you may have in the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, in the Arabian Gulf. If you have no storage and you can't get it out, you've got 5 pounds of something in a 2-pound bag.
Yeah, it's just kind of interesting. Everybody thought, administration, it will change, the price of oil will just shoot up, and it really hasn't shot up. It's been maybe these foreign interventions that seem to have as much impact as anything.
But I think that shows how we've gone to just-in-time delivery. The price shocks, we saw 10 and 20 and 30 years ago. They were serious, but and from an information point of view, you were in the dark. Today, I've got a Bloomberg terminal, and I can tell you where every cargo of oil and natural gas and LNG and cargo of oil is anywhere in the world on the ocean. I can tell you where it is, who owns it, who to call to buy it, what's in it. I can see all of that on my screen. So instead of me going, oh my God, how do I fill my refinery? I look on there and start making calls going, instead of delivering it to Spain, bring it to the UK. I'll pay an extra $2 a barrel. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
And so just-in-time delivery, there's some analysts who still talk about how the correlation of inventories affects oil price. Well, inventories used to matter because you had to have a lot of inventory. Now I order something on Amazon, it's here that afternoon. Okay, everything's gone to just-in-time delivery, including oil. And that's one reason why inventories don't matter as much anymore. And people don't get their knickers quite in a twist, because if you go, I don't know where I'm going to get my oil, I call my trading desk and say, I'll pay up to this price, secure me cargo.
It's kind of like drilling rigs. They used to be only drill a hole. Now they go lateral and everything else. And you don't need, the change in rigs is not what it used to be for the price of oil.
No, they have made themselves so efficient and so capable, and the associated technologies of top drives and iron roughnecks and everything else, they have almost worked themselves out of a job. In 2008, I had 1,600 drilling rigs drilling for natural gas. Today, I have 120. Every year since 2008, natural gas production has gone up, but one.
That's
so I'm producing
amazing.
Twice as much gas with 10% of the rigs, which is great if I'm an oil company, and it really sucks if I'm a drilling contractor.
Yeah, I think we've seen some of that, haven't we?
Yeah, we have.
Consolidation?
Yes, you're still seeing some. The problem is the big guys on shore have pretty much consolidated as much as they can. And offshore, it's been several years of consolidation. But keep in mind, for 7 years, deep water was in a deep ditch, and nobody cared. And so most of the consolidation was either at the front end, sharing a life jacket, or at the back end, post-bankruptcy. In the case of Transocean, no bankruptcy, but everybody else bankruptcy, opportunistic combining with someone. I mean, while Transocean didn't declare bankruptcy, it bought several companies who did. And that's been a very positive consolidation. But the idea, and it's good because we're not going to build a current generation offshore drilling ship, not while I'm doing this, $1 billion in 5 years, if you're lucky. Everybody has to, you've seen the best land drilling equipment. you've got Neighbors, Helmerich & Payne, Patterson, and Precision. You've got 4 players. No offense to independents, but they're in a different league. And those 4 won't combine with each other, and they have no interest in buying the smaller guys. And so in some places, you kind of hit the wall. In overall services, good God, you can consolidate that dramatically from here. There are just some companies that don't seem to want to make a mark.
With, I guess, some of the LNG being cut off in Qatar, what do you think does that raise the prospects for some of the American exporters of LNG, maybe the Cheniers,
Well,
the people like that?
It's good, but keep in mind, Chenier it's just a tolling business. Okay, it's going to make $4 or $5 an MCF turning it into LNG, no matter what the price on the market is. Most all of U.S. LNG is contracted. Okay, we had to get the contracts in advance of building the facility. That was basically project financing to build the LNG facility. And once I get kicked up, I start delivering it. That's why I said earlier that Pakistan got taken advantage of because they had a weak contracting situation. But most all of U.S. LNG is contracted. And don't get me wrong, the business that's on the spot market, or if you can claim force majeure or anything else and free up delivery of cargo, you are making a really nice bit of change because of what's going on. Gutters shut down. And so, and they're our size. So that's a hit. So that's why natural gas prices in Europe are going through the roof. And if U.S. LNG can divert, they will, but it won't change the timeline of any projects that are currently on the books.
I think Venture Global is probably one of the bigger ones, but I don't know how far along they are with all their projects over there in Louisiana, I think.
They're coming up in the next several months, I think. Right now, we're doing 20 Bs a day. And that's expected to go to about 28 Bs a day by 2030.
Well, it doesn't sound like it's going to change that much initially right now. Like you said, 10%, give or take. Nobody's really throwing in the towel, I guess. That being said, do you think maybe the data centers and all the demand for power to power these data centers and who's going to pay for the power and generation, do you think that maybe is kind of a lifeline or a big help to the natural gas industry?
Well, absolutely. It's natural gas is, Elvis Presley at the height of his career. I mean, the only option we have for the next 5 to 7 years is natural gas. And so it's expected that the current U.S. consumption of about 106 Bs a day will go to 130 by 2030, 25% increase over 5 years. And I asked the heads of EQT, Expand, and another company EOG, and they all took the over on the 130. So from a volume point of view, we are definitely going to increase the amount of natural gas we move around this country, and it will be used for both the continued expansion of LNG and, to your point, the AI data center power. There's a problem that will be easily surmounted. As we sit here today, I don't have a basin that's capable of producing 25 more Bs a day in 5 years. In fact, if you put all of my basins together today, the idea of growing them in aggregate by 25 Bs a day in 5 years, you can't see a way to do that. So what has to happen is natural gas prices in the next couple of years has to spike to probably $6, and it'll probably stay there for a year. And it'll spur a big increase in drilling. It'll spur building of pipelines. And after about a year and a half, we will hit 130 Bs, 135, 140 Bs, whatever it is. And gas prices will drop back down to $4 and $4.50. And we will just punt along producing 130 BCF a day plus some growth rate, just like we are now. But I don't see how it happens without getting some spike in commodity prices in natural gas over the next couple of years. The idea that with the current futures strip, we're going to increase gas production by 25 Bs a day by the end of 2030, there is no technology that will let us do that that's even close to on the horizon. So it's gonna require more drilling, and in order to kick up drilling, you got to have more price. But the AI data centers, I mean, a lot of them are running by distributed power right now. Any pressure pumping company that was operating had a diesel-powered or natural gas-powered biofuel engine running a generator to run their whatever they had that wasn't diesel-powered on location, and we've been moving to electric frac spreads, right? So along come data centers, and a couple of the pressure pumping companies go, well, we've got generators and engines. Why don't we buy a couple more and we'll help power your data center? And so this is why you've seen ProPetro, Liberty, Atlas, all these different companies go into that, not expand that business. We got a bunch of them in the field. We're using most of them. We're going to go buy some more, and we're going to power your plant. Now, that's distributed power. And then there's combined cycle natural gas turbines that are much more baseload power, okay? But you can't get one for 2 or 3 years. They're sold out. And the three biggest manufacturers who control 70% of the capacity in the world are doubling capacity. So we'll overbuild them in 5 or 6 years, but we won't start delivering them on an accelerated basis for another 2, okay? And so you're going to have the distributed mobile power start off. It's going to move to more turbine-powered combined cycle gas plants. That's behind the meter. That means it never pulls power off the grid, but it can put excess power on the grid. The distributed power, they're trying to stay off the grid because if I'm buying power from the grid, not only are you, my residential neighbor, going to get pissed because I'm using up all your power and raising the price. Me building a data center for 20 years without knowing what my primary operating cost is going to be is a challenge. And so as an example, Fermi, Rick Perry's project outside of Abilene, they have cut a deal that's very reminiscent of Enron's gas bank, where they go to a couple of far west Texas E&P companies and say, we'll buy your gas for the next 20 years. You produce this much gas and we'll pay you to do it. And you sell us this much gas and we'll just take it off that interconnect pipeline that's right next to our facility. There's actually 2 pipelines, and they're going to take it off those 2 pipelines. So they have to build a 5-mile interconnect, and they have 20-year supply of natural gas, though they've already filed for their nuclear permit, being the far-thinking people they are. But for the next several years, it's going to be all natural gas, whether it's distributed power or gas turbines. Nuclear is going to come back. Small modular reactors are going to come back, but that's probably going to be 5 to 7 years away. But it's going to come back in a fairly big way. And wind and solar, which are great. I'm big fans, okay? All the above is what we need. But you can't use them for data centers. You can't use solar and wind power for data centers because it's not 6 points and reliable. So natural gas has a fabulous future. And in my opinion, you have to see a spike in commodity prices to meet that future. That doesn't mean that they're going to go to $9 and stay there forever, but shoot to $6 for 18 months before settling back down to $4.50. To me, makes sense. People forget the 25-year average price for crude oil is $63. You always seem to revert very close to the mean.
I think you do. We've seen 60 for how many years now? Like you said, not much deviation.
No, not.
I think, natural gas has had some big swings, though.
Yes. With LNG, it became a much more global commodity. And just the natural trending arbitrage over time doesn't happen right away. U.S. gas prices have to go higher, and the rest of the world natural gas prices have to go down, because the more we export, then the more I normalize the global basis. And so some people got excited about it and kind of front ran the timing on that. And it was 3 years ago in August that natural gas averaged $9.35. I wouldn't hold your breath on that anytime soon. Don't get me wrong, it'd be great, but it'll last about as long as it did last time.
And I guess there's going to be a lot more demand for all these data centers. It looks like they're starting to. Well, Texas is now starting to get a lot of the growth versus maybe Virginia. At least they're talking about it. And then you see them being talked about in their backyard, like out there in the Permian, and then anywhere from Dallas to Austin to San Antonio seem to be where they're putting them all.
Mississippi, Memphis, my old hometown, Northeast Louisiana, that one is the size of 94 football fields. Virginia had been the home, but there's an interesting distinction. It's the home to data centers, not AI data centers, just data centers. Well, even today, the cloud is one of those sites in Virginia. Okay. The AI model that somebody's using to run the government, that's at one of the new facilities that are being built. So the difference between a regular data center and an AI data center is fairly significant. Most all the ones being built now are AI data centers. You're also seeing a great deal of activity in the Marcellus area because the thinking is we're never going to get to build pipelines out of the Marcellus. So all that is stranded gas. So that's happening, which I think is great. Texas is doing well because we have so much stranded gas in West Texas. We're building interconnects that can take Permian gas to Louisiana, which we can't do right now, which strands all the Permian gas. But that's just going to start out as an interconnect. So that's going to take 4 or 5 years to move enough gas to matter. So in West Texas, you've got 1 million gallons of water you need to do something with, cooling for an AI data center, and natural gas that on half of the days last year, you sold at a loss at the hub. Seems kind of easy decision time, doesn't it? But the problem again is, how do I power it? Okay. Now, the Texas Public Utility has decided to electrify the Permian, and they're fast tracking it. So they're putting the grid into the Permian, and that's going to be nice and helpful in many ways. But I'm back to, you can't put all these data centers on the grid. They can't get a turbine right away. So my fear is you're going to be ready. Okay, flip the switch, Bob. We're ready to turn it on. And the guy goes, I'm sorry, we don't have any electricity yet. That's my biggest concern right now. But that's temporary. That's an arbitrage that'll be met as fast as smart people can fill it. But it's going to be a shortage of power more than it's going to be a shortage of chips or buildings to put the chips in.
Yeah, I think. But you say that 3 companies build a lot of the, what was it, turbines? What was it, GE and Siemens?
GE, Siemens, and I think it's Hyundai Heavy. But they build 70% of the large gas-fired turbines, and they are all doubling capacity. But, I mean, 6 months ago, the wait list was 2 years. Now I'm hearing it's close to 3.
And I guess you see a lot of projects being announced. Of course, then you see some pushback from the local communities. Sometimes they don't realize a data center may not make the same noise as maybe a Bitcoin mine, but it seems like they all get thrown together.
They do. And I guess I can understand because of the size of these things. They are just, if you could imagine 94 football fields, and that's before they put the power on. But they make a low humming noise. With a gigawatt of power, you would kind of expect that. There is a new term called banana, and it's don't build anything anywhere near anybody. I'll have to get the thing right. Instead of NIMBY, it's now banana. Mm-hmm. And Robert Bryce keeps a track of all the projects that get turned down. And he's done that for wind and solar for several years, and he's now adding data centers to it. But, there's a whole lot. You don't need an urban area. It would be nice to have access to the grid. The big interconnect, JPM, is asking FERC to pass a rule to let them fast track large-scale power plants to interconnect, 10 a year, 250 megawatts and higher. And that's in response to data centers needing power. And so everybody that can be in the value chain is scrambling to provide what they can as fast as they can. I just don't think the market has decided yet, the developers, long-term users, have decided yet exactly how they're going to do this. A lot of these places are leased, so whatever emissions there aren't mine. I just lease it. And all these tech companies are doing some of them arm's length and some of them they're owning. They're trying to own the ones that emit the least. 3 Mile Island by Microsoft. At least the ones that pollute the most, but own the ones like 3 Mile Island that don't pollute as much. And so if you look, while Meta and all the tech companies are behind these projects, they're not always the ones owning these projects. And so that's going to lead to a whole interesting slew of power contracts that are cut. Because you're not going to be cutting a power contract more than likely with Oracle or Apple or Meta. But we haven't gotten to the point where that's an issue yet. And anybody who says, "Oh, we're already working at a data center," that's great. But whether it's full of AI chips or not, I'm going to doubt. And, and that's what you need all the power for, not building more of Virginia type data centers.
Yeah, kind of like, what is it, the one out there in Abilene, Stargate, or then you see names like Blue Owl come up and some of the other names, like who owns who and who's paying for who's taking on all the debt.
Blue Owl and debt have definitely been in the news lately. That's the private credit market appears to be entering a very difficult phase, mainly thanks to the actions of Blue Owl. They've been a big debt holder in place of banks and other typical credit sources for some of these data centers. Fermi being one, that's one in Abilene. They aren't going quite as well as expected. And so they're having to sell some assets to meet redemptions, and they had to deny redemptions to some people. And whenever a fund starts denying redemptions, that is the equivalent of the bank saying, "I'm not going to give you your money." And that causes a run on the banks. And so you mentioned Blue Owl. I just have a concern about the overall private credit markets right now. But Fermi is the project, one of the projects. There's Stargazer 1 and Stargazer 2. But Fermi's the project that Rick Perry was involved with, and they did the stock offering. 6,000 people out there building these facilities. It'll start up and work here in another year or so. I think they're talking about the end of this year, which means it'll be sometime next year. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, the one problem is Abilene didn't have places for 6,000 temporary workers to live, and they didn't have an extra 6,000 workers who didn't have anything to do. So it's interesting. I've been trying to look at getting into the accommodation business, but all the man camps that existed 2 years ago are now being used for AI construction.
Yeah, I remember seeing names. Was it like Target Hospitality out west, or you see like what is it? There's like an Armadillo Palace out there in Odessa, but the man camp kind of atmosphere.
Yep, and now it's welders working on an AI data center. At least they found another use for them. They've been kind of empty since oil broke 70 on the downside.
Yeah, then another name that seemed for a while like Blue Owl was CoreWeave, was another name you'd see in the press for a while, how some of them would kind of migrate from one business initially to a different business down the road.
Yes. We've been telling people in the oilfield service sector and the energy sector overall, find you a spot. There's lots of things we do. All of this stuff is going to be outside, ruggedized, needing air conditioning, needing power, needing mechanics. You do all that. So get creative and figure out how you fit. And you're really starting to see that pick up now. So I think that's good. We are no longer in the oil and gas business. We are in the energy and power business.
I think it makes sense to kind of, redefine what your mission is.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, for a lot of companies, like they've expanded their horizons. Like you said, Atlas, Liberty, ProPetro, they've all kind of made that a bigger world, and now it keeps, one's not so busy, another one is picking up, and they're just trying to put out fires.
And so far, it's the biggest and best part of their business, even though it's brand new. I know. But that's that's taking a step ahead when others don't. Patterson looked at it and passed. Several companies have looked at these valuations and passed. If this equipment isn't being 100% utilized in 4 years, what value do I give it? But right now, asking somebody what equipment's going to be utilized, what their utilization rate's going to be in 4 years, I think I'd rather pick oil prices.
Yeah. I guess sometimes it takes, you have to make a bold statement, maybe like Atlas Sand, putting in that conveyor going to New Mexico. Sometimes you just have to, strike out compared to maybe some of your competitors.
Couldn't agree more. It is the oil business. We got famous with wildcatters, people who took risks. It turns out that it wasn't brains, it was perseverance that made, all our oil people rich. Big Rich is one of my favorite books and was required reading for anybody who worked for me. And you read that, and you realize they weren't brilliant. They just never quit trying.
And perseverance is probably the right word. With wildcatters, how many times did some of them make it and break it, find it again and lose it all?
Several of them too many to count. Clint Murchison died poor. I mean, you never know. One on the Cowboys and one on the Chiefs.
Yeah.
No parallels. I just couldn't resist that.
Well, it's
I live
kind
in
of funny
Dallas,
though.
I'm from Kansas City, so I get to pick on both.
One is the most valuable franchise in sports, and the other one wins Super Bowls.
That's right.
So,
And knowing
I'll
Jerry
leave that
and
one
me,
at that.
I'll take the money. I'm not going to complain.
So I guess what would be maybe some points people should look out for in the next couple weeks or maybe months? I don't see this, Mideast drama lasting too long. I don't think the sides have enough weapons to fight that long. They don't have the munitions to fight that long.
I think it makes for a very good time for everybody to sharpen their pencil and look at where we were before this happened and be realistic about it. Oilfield service companies are going to continue to be needed for a long, long time. Oil demand is going to go up, maybe at a slower rate than we did the last several years, but oil demand is going to go higher for the next several years. And the most pessimistic people out there agree with that statement. We can argue about how much, but net up. Technology will continue to win, but geez, that's what's got us where we are today over the last 15 years. Look for new opportunities. Exxon's one of the biggest lithium producers in the United States now. 4 years ago, most of us couldn't spell lithium, and take advantage of opportunities. Be bold in an industry like this that's looked like it was in secular decline for a little while. Be bold and brave. Meek and mild does not work in this business, and especially right now. Capital discipline is finally being understood in this business. I won't say it's important. It's exceptionally important. And we didn't have it for years. And 5 years ago, return on invested capital was a term that most of these companies, E&P and service, didn't know what it meant. And now it's all they operate on. And so pay attention to their discipline on that. But considering it's usually set by the board, and I figure there are only 7,000 board members who are on bankrupt companies over the last 10 years, that'll teach you a lesson. So the boards are making it very difficult for a foolish E&P CEO to start drilling just because oil prices go up. So the likelihood we get stupid is low. So you shouldn't be stupid on drilling wells. You shouldn't be stupid on borrowing money. So what else can you do? Find other businesses, become more efficient, focus more on culture than you might have in the past, because that's becoming a greater differentiator than we've seen in a very long time. And keep your head down and do what you do, because there's demand for it.
Jim, I appreciate it. I guess we should have this conversation in another 2 weeks. It's amazing how fast our world changes now. Like you said, years ago, you didn't know where anybody was, where a vessel was, or where a truck was.
Right.
Nowadays, everybody knows where every vehicle in the fleet is, where it was, when it was there, and what it's carrying.
I've got an interactive map showing every ship and every time it moves in the entire Middle East. And I can put a cursor on it, and I can tell you the name of the ship, how big it is, where it's coming from, where it's going to, who owns it, what's in it, and how to contact it. Which I have no need for, of course, but the level of information that's available to your fingertips today, and then you start thinking about how AI is going to be, jump into this, find me the most optimized cargo of everything that's on the water, click. It's going to be amazing. So it's going to be fun. Mark, I appreciate this. Ask me back sometime. I'll be more than happy to kibitz where I was wrong. It's usually an easy thing to do.
Jim, I think you're kind of the old sage when it comes to this industry.
I'll give you old. Got to question the sage part. Okay, Mark.
All right. Thank you so much, Jim. Take care.
Okay.